What's up, everybody? Joe Ringen here, back with you for another book review. Well, and this one is going to be different, kind of. It's not really going to be a review. It's going to be more of like me giving my observations of reading this book. Because as you can see by looking at the background, what I'm about to throw at you guys is a Shakespeare play. So that's normally not something in my wheelhouse, but I'm glad I read. I'm glad I read some Shakespeare, man, and I'll go into a little bit of detail about why. And but first, besides being a lover of reading and reviewing, I also am a writer, and I wrote a book. It's called The Ballad of Ages. It's a tale of epic fantasy. Check it out on Amazon if you want something cool to read, something new, something fun. So now that that's out of the way, let's talk about some good old William Shakespeare. So the reason I'm not going to like review this, like give a score, I mean, is because I'm not qualified to to be a critic of Shakespeare. Like, I don't have an English major. All I know is I like to read and I read a lot, and so I can give my opinions and observations, and maybe that's worth a lot because probably a lot of people aren't like Shakespeare scholars, but they like to read, and so maybe from that perspective, it's helpful. I hope, but let's just jump right in, man. So the reason that I'm veering off track a little bit from just normal fantasy, sci-fi, and classic literature is I like to kind of follow, like, go down rabbit holes of just things. Like, that's how I like to read and consume, like, media. So what I mean by that is, like, you know, if you read one book and it references this other book, then I like to read that other book kind of thing. And anyway, I think that's a fun way of doing it instead of just having like a list, you know, and just crossing off the list. Just kind of go where the wind takes you, right? Follow the signs. Anyway, so what happened is me and my wife went to see Macbeth at the Guthrie Theater, which is a theater here in Minneapolis. So we went to go see Macbeth. And so before I saw it, though, I'm like, I got to read this. And to be fair, I read it way back in high school, a million years ago. But like in high school, I probably didn't really actually read it. You know, I promise you, I didn't. At least not all of it. And I certainly didn't appreciate it in high school. Like reading wasn't really my jam in high school. Well, no, that's not true. It was, but assigned reading was not my jam in high school. Anyway, different topic. So I got this complete works, William Shakespeare. It's a chunky one, but it's really cool. It's got every single thing, and so Macbeth is in there. So that's what this review is. This is specifically about the play Macbeth. That's the other reason I'm not giving it a score is because this isn't really a novel. It's a play. Shakespeare wrote plays. But anyway, so I wanted to like go to Macbeth, the show, and have that fresh in my mind. So I read it. And oh man, I'm really glad I did. There's a lot of awesome stuff about Shakespeare, and you know, Shakespeare. It's kind of intimidating. Like seriously, it's kind of like unless you have a PhD in English or something, it seems like kind of scary because you know he's got all the flowery words and some words it's you don't understand all the meanings, and I think like he makes up words too. But this play, at least, was actually very understandable, easy to digest, and very easy to enjoy. And maybe it's just the stage in life. Like high school Joe would not understand this and definitely did not understand it. But now, you know, I've read a lot more and sort of grown my vocabulary and stuff. And maybe that's why I can understand it more than I did in high school. But I think I know that's true. But I also think Macbeth is a very good like entry point for Shakespeare. I think it's one of his shorter plays. It honestly it took about 2 hours to read, so it's not too intimidating. So if you guys want to read like a Shakespeare that's not Romeo and Juliet, like everyone knows that one, but Macbeth is a great one. It's a good entry, and spoiler, I'm gonna read more Shakespeare for a couple reasons that I'll go into. Again, I'm not like I don't know. I think like people that read Shakespeare probably you think of like professors or what like super like theater people or stuff like that, which is kind of sad because I think everyone can and should enjoy Shakespeare, even just like normal people. I think he's really good. Obviously, he's lasted. He's a legend, a master of the English language. So now let's just move right into Macbeth itself. What is it about? Why is it cool? What sort of things make it cool? So it's a simple tale, but it's a tale that resonates with everyone. It's been told a million times, but it's about ambition and pride. I think are the main themes that I pulled out of it. So the main guy, Macbeth, he's a noble or a duke in Scotland, and they have a war, and so Scotland wins. But Macbeth was thinking he's going to get like this big promotion or whatever, and he'd be like next in line to the throne or something. But that doesn't exactly happen. And then Macbeth and his buddy, oh gosh, what's his name? Bagulio or something like that. Sorry, I'm messing it up. It starts with a B. But so they meet these witches in the forest. So that's another cool thing about Macbeth is it's very like fantastical. It's kind of like a fantasy story woven into real life. And I should say Macbeth, I did a little research. So Macbeth is loosely based on real events, as I guess a lot of Shakespeare's plays are. But this really did happen, kind of. I don't think there were really witches in the real life. But Macbeth killed the king and took the crown. Not exactly the way it happened in the story, but it did. It's loosely based on real life Scottish history. Anyway, but in the play, Macbeth runs into three witches, and they give this prophecy and say, kind of lead him down a trail of his own ambition, and so he's thinking because of this prophecy he's going to be king. But he kind of takes that. He struggles with, okay, does this just happen, or do I have to do something to make this happen? And so he consults with his wife, who is equally as ambitious, and you could argue that she's actually the biggest villain in the play, but she sort of influences Macbeth, and they hatch a scheme, and they end up killing the King of Scotland, and then he becomes king. So that's really the plot, but the thing is, it's so deep, and it's so well written, and you see that what's cool about Macbeth is you see that selfish ambition, which is what Macbeth struggled with. It really doesn't end well ever. You get what your goal is. He becomes king, but the means or the trail the path that he takes to get there completely ruins his life, and of course other people's lives, the victims' lives and their families. But this really focuses on Macbeth and his descent into madness, really, and paranoia. So he achieves what he wants, but he can never even enjoy it because he basically goes insane. He's paranoid all the time that, this person knows that I really killed the king, and so he has to kill that person, and then it's just, once the deed is done, it cannot be undone. And he goes insane, and so it's a great warning, just like for us in life. I love taking themes out of literature and truths out of literature, and then just internalizing them and saying, hey, like if you're ever faced with a similar situation in life, think about how that plays out in some famous works of literature, and then use that as a warning. Like, okay, there's probably not ever going to be a situation where I am faced with a situation of, do I murder a king to become king? That probably will never happen. But you can sort of apply it like, do I put down coworkers, so I get a promotion over them, stuff like that. Selfish ambition is very bad, and this highlights that. So, in those situations, okay, maybe I got a promotion, but all the people I had to put down to get there, it would really, I wouldn't even be able to enjoy it, kind of thing, and it would hurt their lives too. So, this focuses on be dutiful, focus on duty in your vocation, and that's number one. And then if you get promoted or stuff because of that, great, but you don't hurt people along the way to achieve your goals. That's what MacBeth does, and it doesn't end well, and it ruins his life and of course other people's lives. So that's why this book or this play I think is so famous, is because it might be the first. It's very old. It was made in like the 1600s, and it might be the first story that really focuses on like the mental aspect of committing like a murder or a deed or a bad sin. It really focuses on that, and there's probably a ton of stories about someone killing a king, right, to take their crown. But they probably don't focus on the mental aspect and how it causes you to really go insane and just be paranoid constantly. And maybe MacBeth is one of the first that does that, and maybe that's why it's so famous. So, but I'm sure the other reason it's famous is because Shakespeare wrote it, and Shakespeare's a master of language. His words, every single word is just perfectly placed. I didn't really expect that. I knew he was good at writing, but holy cow, it's so good. So good, man. Like all the words. He writes like poetry, but it's not like boring poetry, if that makes sense. I don't know how else to describe it. He writes like poetical in that his words often have multiple meanings. The words he uses often have multiple meanings, but he's so clever in how he constructs the sentences where the multiple meanings still bring the reader to the point he's trying to make. So it's just like jazz music on steroids. That's what this is. So it's like poetry, but it's like narrative poetry, kind of like Homer, like epic, but it's not even like epic poetry. It's a totally different genre, all on his own. And it's so awesome. And if you love good prose and cool vocabulary, like musical, poetic language, read Shakespeare, man. He hits everything. Great plots, great characters, great prose. I'm sad that it's taken me this long to read his stuff. And maybe it's good that I'm finding it or rediscovering Shakespeare now, because like I said, in high school I would never appreciate how incredible he is. But now, after having built a vast repertoire of other books that I've read, I think I'm certainly ready for this. For Shakespeare, not smart enough to critique him, but I can confidently say I'm smart enough to enjoy him now, and that's more important, I think. So yeah, the play is great, and it's funny because like I didn't realize some of the super famous lines. There are very famous lines in MacBeth, and we hear them all the time in culture referenced. But like I read them, I'm like, whoa, that's from MacBeth. That's sweet. So like obviously the two super famous ones, I wrote them down. So I'm looking off screen, but it's the witches, the weird sisters, the witches. So the most famous one, of course, is double, double, toil and trouble, fire burn, and cauldron bubble. So like that's referenced all the time, like in Halloween, and I think it's a song, right? So that I was like, what? That's Shakespeare. That's Macbeth. And the other one, of course, is very famous too. It's the Weird Sisters in the play said this, and it's Ray Bradbury ran with this. So by the pricking of my thumbs, something wicked this way comes. So that's the Weird Sisters, the super famous lines, and it was just fun when I read that. I'm like, oh man, that's what that's from. Very cool, very cool. Some other lines that I loved is just one I highlighted is just how like his prose is so awesome. Here's one where Macduff, who's like the good guy, I guess, and he gets his family is just his life is ruined by Macbeth. But he encounters Macbeth, and he's so angry and vengeful. And he, instead of saying, "I'm angry with you, Macbeth, I want revenge," right? Like that's what like a lot of modern authors would write. But Shakespeare's like, I'm a master of language. I'm going to say it this way. So what he writes is, this is Macduff saying to Macbeth, "I have no words. My voice is in my sword. Thou bloodier villain than terms can give thee out." I might have wrote that wrong. I don't know. But the point was, I have no words. My voice is in my sword. That conveys the message so much cooler. Because, and that's Shakespeare. That's how he writes. Like, he paints a picture in your head with words, and he gets the point across. Again, instead of saying, "I see you, evil Macbeth. I'm going to kill you with my sword," he says, "I have no words. My voice is in my sword." So that just, if that doesn't paint the picture of exactly what's going on and what's coming next, then you probably just, I don't know how to help you, but it's so cool. Oh, I love it. But that's just one line I highlighted. The whole thing is like that. And that's why Shakespeare is so great. And then and it's kind of, there's some funny stuff too that, this one I loved. It's this little kid or Macduff's son talking to Lady Macduff. So it's a little scene. I'll just read it. So the son says, talking to his mother, "What is a traitor?" Lady Macduff says, "Why, one that swears and lies." And the son says, "And be all traitors that do so?" Lady Macduff says, "Everyone that does so is a traitor and must be hanged." The son says, "And must they all be hanged that swear and lie?" She says, "Everyone." The son goes, "Who must hang them?" And then she says, "Why, the honest men, of course." So then the son, and this is just great, he goes, "Then the liars and the swearers are fools, for there are liars and swearers enough to beat the honest men and hang them." That's just funny. Oops, I lost the thing. Okay. That's just hilarious. So I love that. Those are the kind of lines in high school I would just blow past and probably wouldn't even read. But nowadays I read it and it's just so clever and funny because it's true if you think about it. Like, why? There's way more bad people in the world than good people. The good people should just overtake the bad people should just overtake the good people. But thank God that doesn't always happen. But a lot of times through divine intervention, it doesn't. But it's just funny. There's a lot of truths that are true today, just like that Shakespeare puts in this. So you can really glean a lot from reading his stuff. So I'm definitely going to continue on with Shakespeare. Maybe not right away, but it's cool. And it's one thing like that might be not concerning, but like might draw people away from reading Shakespeare is that they're written as a play. So it's not like novel. It's not like written like a novel. It's written like a play. So it's just a person's name, their dialogue, and that's it. The thing is, though, he's so good with words. Like some of the stuff I read to you a second ago, he can paint pictures without having to say the sun was setting, the forest was filled with, I don't know, bears or something. He doesn't have to say that. He doesn't have to set the scene. He can do that with dialogue. And that's maybe that I know for a fact that's what I love. I love reading dialogue versus description. And if you read my stuff, I know that's how I like to write, more dialogue than description. I'm drawn to that. Maybe some people aren't. So if you don't like that, probably don't read Shakespeare. But if you like dialogue, read Shakespeare. And it's like Plato's dialogues. That's where I first fell in love with like dialogues. There's no description in Plato's dialogues either. It's all just dialogues. And that's what Shakespeare is, because he writes plays. And I really like that. I think it's fun to read. I think it's fun to read and write in mostly dialogue where the description comes from the people talking. I think that's super cool. And of course, Shakespeare does it very well. So don't be like scared that it's not written like a novel. You still know what's going on. You still know the scene. You're immersed into it. It kind of feels like you're reading it like a novel, even though it's not written that way. So don't let that scare you. It's very good. It's very cool. So yeah, great themes in this. to take away and apply to real life. I think, I mean, Macbeth's a great entry point. There's a lot of other cool ones that I've sort of read about that I'm going to jump into eventually. I'm so stoked that Shakespeare made his way into my life because I know that reading Shakespeare has sort of rekindled my love of language and writing and reading. And there's so much probably in our culture that is derived right from Shakespeare, kind of like from Macbeth. So it's going to be fun to discover those things. But again, I'm not giving it a score. It's great. Whatever score I give it, it doesn't matter. He's stood the test of time. And Macbeth is super famous. Famous enough where it's still being played today, shown today by actors. Like, we saw it, literally last weekend. So it's still happening. So he's, of course, a legend. He's great. So that's all I got for you today. The next video is going to be somewhat related to this. It's not Shakespeare, but it's somewhat related to this. So I'm excited for that one. But until then, all of you take care. Enjoy the rest of your weekends. And we'll see you later.